All right, this video is going to document how to use the PayPal integrations generator to set up our intacct or in-account integration for invoicing on the C9.io environment. So for those of you that don't know what C9.io is, just a way, cloud application that can run node applications. It is free to use. It will actually ask for a credit card if you don't currently have an account, but it does not charge you currently. So you can test this out for free. So once we create and log into our C9 account, we need to just create a workspace and name it. So for this, I'm going to do tag generator test. You can name it whatever you want. Select Node.js. Create workspace. So this is going to take a couple minutes. I am going to fast forward through this portion. All right, so once our application or our workspace is created, we can now go to the generator documentation for setting up C9, which is located on the GitHub repository. If I look at the C9 documentation, there's a couple steps that I need to take. First off, we need to switch to the Node 8 environment. So I'm going to run these two commands. The first one sets the default version of Node as the latest, which is Node 8 currently. And then we are going to use the default. All right. So next, we need to install Yarn, which is an alternative package manager. You can use npm if you know what you're doing. It's probably easiest just to install Yarn here. All right, so now we added Yarn. Now we want to export the global path, which is needed to install global packages. So we do that by running this export command. And finally, we just install Yarn, the Yaomin generator globally. And then the PayPal integrations generator globally. All right, and now we can actually run the PayPal integrations generator. So I do yo PayPal integrations, and for this, I want to use the intacct generator. And then it's going to ask you a series of questions to set up the application. The first being the intacct sender ID. So these credentials you're actually going to get from intacct in account. Get the password. And the user ID. If you have any problems with this portion, you should contact your in-account account manager. All right, so when asked what functionality would you like to enable, currently we only have invoicing. We will be building out some additional functionality in the future. For now, we'll just say invoicing. Project name, this just goes in the package.json, so I'm just going to say SDF. Really doesn't matter unless you're committing it elsewhere. Host name, just leave as the default, which is the C9 host name. Same with public port, private port. We're not using VS Code, so just hit enter. All right, so now we need our PayPal REST client ID, and this is and the client ID is available in your PayPal developer account. Paste that in here. And we need the REST secret, which is also available in the developer account. Paste that in here. And for this testing, we are going to use a sandbox environment. We'll leave the webhook route the same. All right, do you want to automatically create invoices? This option actually will automatically create an invoice once they're created in intacct. If you set this to no, then you actually have to specifically check the custom field on the invoice in order for it to be generated. For this, we're actually just going to automatically create invoices. And it's the same for refunding. Do you want to automatically do it or have to manually check a box in account? Invoice job frequency. This is how often we query intacct for the invoices. So the default is every 1 hour. This can be any text that can be parsed by the JavaScript later package. So you can go take a look at that package to see what you can add here. This is the refund job frequency, just defaults to 1 day. The default intacct payment account ID is an intacct payment account that you want to apply a payment to by default. So this, if there's no other payment accounts set up, it will automatically go to this account. And in our testing environment, ours is called SunTrust. So I'm going to add that here. The additional currency accounts, you can set up additional currencies for like USD or Canadian dollar and specifically send invoices for those currencies to different payment accounts in intacct. For this, we are actually not going to set that up. And then the start date, which is the start of your go live. So we won't pick up any invoices that were created prior to this date. It defaults to yesterday. And finally, the PayPal email address of the merchant account. So this is the merchant account that is attached to your PayPal client ID. And for this one, it is seller@awesome.com. invoicejobfrequency.com. You'd want to put in whatever your PayPal Sandbox account email address is here. Now it's going to write the files for us, so I'm just going to overwrite. Then it's going to install the application. All right, and now it is actually done installing, and it's building the application, and now it's done. So I would have to execute yarn start dev in order to start the actual server. But before I do that, I want to actually create an invoice in Intacct so we can test to make sure that this is actually working. So I'm going to head on over to my Intacct development environment, and I'm going to go under my accounts receivable, invoices. I'm going to create a new invoice. So I should also mention that in order for this to work, we have to actually add some custom fields to InAccount. So you'll see on the custom fields tab, there's these additional PayPal custom fields. So in order to do that, you should, if you need help, you can speak with your Intacct account manager, or you can go under, once you're on the actual invoicing, there is, a way to actually edit the object definition here. And you'll see that we created the following custom fields. So you'll want to actually add these 5 custom fields before you can run the application. So after you have these created, then we can go into invoices, and we want to add an invoice. And I'm just going to quickly populate from the last one that I created. Here we used my Intacct customer account. See all that information. It's due on October 2nd, and then we want to make sure this is not negative because this was actually refunded. So, all right, so $111. So as soon as I post this, it will now be picked up by our application. So we set the job to run every hour, so this would be picked up on an hourly basis and a PayPal invoice actually created. So we'll see as of right now, there are custom fields, there are none. But now I'm going to go back to our app and start the server. And we will see the application starting up. And you're going to see a whole bunch of logging as this application starts up. But most importantly, we're going to see that we have an invoice that was created and sent. All right, so now we'll see the server is completely booted up. Once we see the actual connection information. So if we go back to intacct, we should see that the custom fields are now populated. You might have to refresh this if you're not seeing them. All right, so once the invoice is created at PayPal, we are going to push that information back to intacct, which includes the PayPal invoice ID, a PayPal invoice URL to pay it, and you will also get the invoice status. So since we're in Sandbox, our Sandbox environment does not send emails, so you're not going to get an actual email of the invoice. But if this were in production, I would have gotten an email from PayPal to my email address asking me to pay the invoice. But for this application, you could also send this payment URL as well, and this is how we're actually going to show you how everything works when you pay it. So once the customer actually pays it, you could either send them this link, or once they get the email, they click the link in the email, and then you will see the invoice, and I'm going to pay it. All right, so I'm going to log in and pay the invoice. All right, so once the customer pays the invoice, if we watch on our application in C9 here, we're going to wait for a PayPal webhook, which will be sent to this application, and we should see it in the logs. Also, I should note that webhooks in our Sandbox environment may be a little slow, and occasionally they actually don't work at all. So if that's the case, you can actually just restart the server, and it will apply the payment next time, either in that next hour when the job runs again, or if you started it and restarted it, it would pick up the payment as well. All right, so you'll see here that I received the webhook on the webhook URL. And you'll also see that we posted a payment back to intacct. So now if I go back to intacct, our payment should be created when our invoice should be paid. All right, so we got paid in full for credit card, and that actually went against the default payment account. So the last part of functionality that I wanted to demonstrate is just that we can reverse the payment and the invoice, and it will be refunded at PayPal. So if I go into my posted payments here, this is the payment that we just posted. It's that default account. I view it. Oop. And I reverse it. And then I want to reverse the invoice as well. I hit submit. So once that refund job runs, which we have it configured to run every day, that would be refunded at PayPal. So in order to force that, I'm just going to stop the server and restart it so that it runs right now. and you'll see a refund log here. Means that it was refunded at PayPal. You'll see some more logging. Now when I look at the invoice and in account, I will see that it has been refunded. So it was reversed in account. And when I view it in PayPal, we will see that the invoice was refunded. So at that point, the customer had his or her money refunded to them. All right, and that is it for this video on how to test out the PayPal Intacct integration via the PayPal integrations generator. Hopefully you enjoyed it.